Hola, mi gente. I didn't know that word until J Balvin had his song. Thank you very much, J Balvin. Right, so we need to drastically slash our carbon emissions, and transport is the largest single source contributor of carbon emissions in the UK, and within that, private cars are the biggest single contributor in that. The fundamental problem is too many cars traveling too many miles when everything we know shows we have to cut demand. So the level of traffic reduction we need to see over the next decade is unprecedented. We've not seen anything like this before. And we can't just exclusively rely on a like-for-like replacement of motor vehicles with EVs. So, to find the massive traffic cuts we need, we should obviously look to our cities, where population density and the use of space mean things are typically within walking, wheeling, or cycling distance. And cost-efficient public transport provision should, at least in theory, be easy. So over the past 3 years, Possible's Car-Free Cities campaign put forward the positive case for urban traffic reduction. And I know some people may gasp when they hear the word car-free. But we're clear a car-free city is a city free of the dangers, pollution, and emissions caused by the mass private car ownership. It's not a city with no cars at all. We recognize there are many people, including some disabled people, who can't get around without a car, and our aim of fewer cars on the road means more space for those who must drive and better cities for everyone. But we're also clear that mass private car ownership basically ruins cities. The toxic air, the collisions, the congestion, the lack of access to green space, the inactivity crisis, and social isolation, and these harms disproportionately impact ethnic minorities and the most vulnerable in our communities. And contrary to popular beliefs, the richest in our society drive far more than the poorest, who more often walk or rely on buses. So freeing people from the burdens of car ownership is a major win, from economic productivity to better health to community cohesion, and so much more. So after 3 years of doing this work, what do we learn? Well, the first thing is that change is hard and opposition is inevitable. So if you're finding it difficult, the Goodwin curve is here to let you know that that's normal. So at first, an idea is seen as ludicrous. That's over here with that brain thought going on there. Then people are won over in theory by the arguments. So it's like, oh, we've got too many cars here. Do you want to see a reduction in traffic and congestion? They're like, yeah, we like the sound of that. So people are won over. But as soon as the plans and the details start emerging, that's when there's loud opposition. So that's where it's, do you want a clean air zone? Should we introduce low traffic neighborhoods? Should we, make parking permits more expensive? Things like that. That's when there's loud opposition right there where that star is. That's the big bang. But when the change has been implemented and people start enjoying the benefits of the said change, support grows with time and the opposition dissipates. So as an example, there's been quite the media frenzy in Britain about low traffic neighborhoods. I know you've got them in Barcelona as well, they're the super blocks. But the aim of an LTN is to stop cars and lorries cutting through the minor roads, making walking, wheeling, and cycling easier and safer, whilst also improving the air quality of the area. So you can see where the barriers are put, where there's those red kind of no entry signs, that's basically where those planters are put. And it means if you want to get to that place, you still can. You just have to drive a little, go round, so you can't shortcut through. Poll after poll will show more support than opposition, but criticisms from a few are loud and can be very, very hostile. Now, traffic filters as used to create low traffic neighborhoods, or LTNs, are not new. We've been using them routinely since the 60s, so we've got over 60 years of evidence that they work. We surveyed nearly 300 households on streets with historic modal filters that those put in the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, and we found that they're overwhelmingly popular. So people's views about traffic filters are not fixed. They trend towards greater support following lived experience with the change. And where the status quo is a filtered street, residents focus on the problems that would be caused if that were to change. They start thinking about, oh, you can't take that out because then there'll be more noise pollution, more air pollution, there'll be more traffic here, we don't want that. So the point here is that change meets resistance no matter the starting point. We've been collecting stories of change from all around the world, and you can have a look online. You can go on wearepossible.org and find it there. And they find it's 25 case studies which bring to life the pattern in the Goodwin curve here. So the one big pattern is initial fears about potentially negative impacts from traffic reduction prove unfounded. Once bedded in and the benefits have been realized, people don't want to go back. So what we need is political leaders who practice good communication, are courageous, tenacious, and see things through. So the second learning is, where are we going? So we are creatures of habit. We rely on familiar patterns and routines to navigate our lives. So the prospect of a new and uncertain future can be daunting. It's difficult to envision something that is completely outside of our current frame of reference. So our Car-Free Visions project took people on a journey from fear to the future. We worked with a diverse cross-section of locals in each of our cities to develop new visions of their communities free from car dominance. These residents were not climate campaigners. Many of them were regular drivers themselves. And over the course of 3 weekends, we unpacked and explored the problems caused by cars, the disproportionate impact on marginalized communities, definitions of a car-free city, and took inspiration from cities around the world and produced examples of equitable public spaces. So they came up with these visions. They believe in these visions, and they launched them to great fanfare. They embraced the fear to the future journey. And if anybody wants to understand the importance of these visions, we polled people to garner support for the before and after images. We asked over 1,000 Londoners whether they would support the pedestrianisation of Hyde Park Corner to link it up with Green Park. And that's this, bit here. 49% agreed, 27% disagreed, and 23% said they don't know. We then presented them with this image and asked, imagine that a pedestrianised Hyde Park Corner looked like this image. To what extent would you support or oppose the pedestrianisation of Hyde Park Corner? And would you believe support shot up to 72%, and there was only 10% of people opposing, 14% neither supported nor opposed, and 3% said they don't know. So we have to show people where we're trying to take them. So the third thing we learned is that numbers matter less than stories. And I know that's a familiar theme that's been said before, but we like to pretend that we're rational beings. That's not true. At least it's not the whole truth. We're also deeply irrational, contradictory, and flawed, and very, very human. But humans love a story. We've been telling stories since the very beginning. So let me take you through our Going Car Free project, which surfaced new stories and new messengers. So in 2022, we followed a diverse group of 10 regular drivers with a variety of mobility needs. Most of them parents, some of them disabled, as they tried to go car-free. We asked them to complete pre- and post-trial surveys, daily travel logs, and record their experiences via videos and voice notes. They recorded 1 week of usual car use, and then 3 weeks going car-free. We basically asked them to not use their personal car, but provided a transport hierarchy of sustainable other options, and they could pick anything on that, including car clubs. Everyone was given a set fee to participate, and we refunded all non-car travel expenses. We were also able to provide participants with cycle training and bikes where they needed it. And so what did we find? So most participants actually reduced their carbon emissions. Oh, hold on. Yeah, that one. There we go. That's carbon emissions on the left up there. And after the trial, all participants reported using their cars less or using alternative modes for some journeys. So we had a few stars who actually sold their cars off the back of this experience. So Julia here was living the dream because she told us that she sold her car and turned it into solar panels for her house. This is Michelle, who was very, very happy to sell her car. Joe went from a 2-car household to a 1-car, and importantly, EV household. And Funmi did not sell her car, but she loved cycling, and she wants to get a bike of her own and cycle more. She had a great piece in The Guardian about how this has been completely life-changing for her. Nathaniel similarly loved the experience so much that he now wants to buy his own bike for his commute. He is an ambulance driver in Bristol, and he's since helped us with much more campaigning on traffic reduction. So there were some fantastic stories about people who were inspired to lobby for school streets in their local area after taking part in the trial. And school streets basically restrict traffic on roads outside of schools at pick-up and drop-off times during term time. So the trial demonstrates how a short intervention to reorganize routines can create long-term behavior change. So the learnings and findings from that cohort informed our public Going Car Free campaign, which launched in July, and anyone across the country could take part. We used their stories online and in the press to inspire others to participate. Now, obviously, asking most drivers to give up driving for a month is a fundamentally bigger ask than it is to ask them not to eat meat or drink alcohol for a month. So I'm unbelievably proud that we got 1,000 people to participate in the month, from all across England and beyond the 4 cities that we usually work in. 98% of people who completed the post-challenge survey said they're planning on reducing their car use for good. We had huge press interest all over. And then we also had this Merton councillor and London Assembly member called Hina Bukhari, who took up the challenge and actually learned how to ride a bike during July. She did a lovely interview on BBC London about being a middle-aged brown Muslim woman on a bike, and that was one of the key things about this. We need to create more diverse messengers in the sustainable transport sector. It can't just be middle-aged white men in Lycra talking about this, although they are very, very welcome. One participant used giveacar.co.uk to sell their car and chose to donate that money to Possible. Very grateful for them. And of course, we're excited to be running the Going Car Free project again in 2024. And then the final lesson I want to talk about is how small interventions can equal big impact. So space in the urban public realm in particular is a zero-sum game, and currently vast swathes of our city are given over to private cars, whether they're moving or parked. And on-street parking spaces, they take up space. They could be used for anything else, buses, cycle lanes. They make walking, wheeling, and cycling much more harder. And research shows that the availability, accessibility, and cost of parking specifically has a more significant impact on car ownership rates than costs like insurance and fuel. So it might not be very sexy, but parking policy is a critical tool in the transport decarbonisation toolbox, with almost any other use for on-street parking space being more pro-climate than storage for private cars. So our Parklets campaign aims to popularise parklets as a positive, people-centred approach to decreasing on-street parking and shifting road space away from cars. Parklets offer a place for children to play outside and develop their independence. They can provide a space for those with mobility needs to rest, improve people's access to greenery and public space, and foster a strong sense of community, whilst also being a place to learn new things. Removing parking tends to ruffle some feathers, but parklets are an almost uniquely grassroots approach to pursuing this, and they visibly deliver improvements over what was there before, i.e. just a parked car. So our pop-up parklets have collectively attracted hundreds of visitors. Several councillors came down to showcase their support, and they've been featured in the press. And all of this is in service of calling for an easy parklet permit process across London, just in the way that people can apply for a parking permit right now. So we've had some great success. Waltham Forest, which is a council in London, we helped produce their first community parklet in June 2022. And we inspired Lambeth Council, that's another council in London, to produce this really ambitious curbside strategy, and we're supporting them with introducing parklets. We helped some Hackney residents to install a community parklet in August. So I think I'm almost out of time, but I just wanted to say that we've worked in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, and London with communities, particularly those most harmed by the effects of mass car dominance, to co-design and deliver changes to their own streets, and encourage and inspire local decision makers to raise ambitions and accelerate change in our cities. We helped expand London's ultra-low emission zone and introduce Birmingham's clean air zone. We campaigned for better buses and school streets. We helped 1,000 people to cut their car use. We built parklets and inspired parklet permit processes, and so much more. And that's all to say that change is difficult. That's where I started. But it's happening in the present in small ways that will lead to big transformations. Thank you very much.